Kodiak? I'm Kodiak. This is episode 12 of our show. Today with me, I have Sir Anatole Stroke. How you doing today?
I'm very well. How you doing, bud?
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. All right. We've been chatting for a while. I've been trying to get this going, and I'm super excited. So let's just get them firing. Let's get to those bare necessities.
That was all the best content too.
Oh,
right?
sure.
Like it's all downhill from here.
Here we go. Here comes the shit show, folks. So let's get to the bare necessities. Sorry, Sin. Sir Anatole Stroke. Where does Anatole Stroke come from?
The name?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, New Mexico?
Nailed it.
But the name, it's a little bit of an embarrassing story. I had several names before I decided on Anatole, and none of them were very good. And I knew this because I got relentlessly ridiculed for those names, namely by my knight, Randall, who was not my knight at that time, made fun of a lot of my names. Because I had like picked him out of like Dragonlance novels and stuff, sure. And he was like, And then I had like find another name that somebody at the park already had, and he'd be like, oh, sorry. So eventually, like, as embarrassed as I am to talk about it, I looked in the back of like a Vampire the Masquerade book, right, at a bunch of NPCs, and I found some vampire named Anatole, and I was like, that's the name. And I think the very next weekend when I changed my name to Anatole, Randall made some like Anatole ravioli spaghetti joke and compared me to a bowl of pasta.
Fantastic.
But at that point, my spirit as a newbie was so beaten down and so broken that I just went with it, So that's how the name. The Stroke part is Fyron's doing, who is a warlord of Dragonspine and a member of Wheel. He came up with the idea that we should be the brothers Stroke, or the family Stroke. And mostly because when any of us becomes a master, then we'd be a master Stroke. So that's the dumb story behind that.
I love it. Folks, just from that story alone, no matter what you've done in Amcard, anything's possible. I'm talking to a knight as we speak.
Yeah, you can make up whatever. Nothing matters.
Right. So I know that you were talking about before Sir Randall was your knight. So that's got a little bit of length to it. How long have you been playing Amcard?
I started unofficially at a Renaissance fair in Las Cruces in 2000. And then I don't know why, I don't think I was too young, but for whatever reason, I didn't sign a waiver until exactly a year later at the Renaissance fair in 2001.
So 19 years officially, 20 years unofficially?
Más o menos, yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. My nightly checks are kind of interesting with this question because you would assume the answer, but what is your award that you're most proud of receiving?
Yeah, that's a real tough one. That's a real tough one. When you had kind of given me the questions earlier, that is definitely the one that I really chewed on the most. And can I do multiples?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. I nailed it down to three. I nailed it down to 3 awards. The first one is easy. The first one is Knight of the Sword, of Dragonspine specifically, right? Not just Knight of the Sword, but Knight of the Sword in Dragonspine. And that's for 2 reasons. The first is that there hadn't at that point been any sword knights in Dragonspine for 10 years. And the second reason for that, that I say sword knight, is because I didn't get knighted alone. I was knighted with one of my best friends, Sir Ilmrin, who was technically knighted before me by about 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. But, me and Ilmrin had gone way back, like prior to Amcard, one of my best friends. And it was really special to be able to share that moment with him. and both of us be able to say, like for 10 years there hasn't been anything. Now we're the two newest, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that was really cool, and that's still a very special memory for me. The second is when I received my baronet title, and I received my baronet title after being Randall's heir apparent. I was like 16 or something like that. I didn't really appreciate this title at first because I thought baronet was a girl's title. And I thought that Ben had pulled another fast one on me. And I was like, wow, this dude just gave me a girl's title. Well, you, dude, right? But
Yeah.
it's not a girl's title. And I was an insecure 16-year-old boy, so I feel like I can be forgiven for that. But that title, that was a really great reign. And I think that reign being, I think Randall was king, Iron Paw was regent, and Amy Azrael was prime minister. I think I forgot who was champion, but that reign just really sparked a love of Amtgard and a love of all things Amtgard for me. Right? I felt like that was the reign, and in taking that position, that was kind of the first time I ever saw Amtgard as a bigger organization and everything it had to offer, and it really ignited my passion for Amtgard.
Awesome.
Yeah, so baronet, and then every noble title afterwards was a baronet title. So I've been like a master baronet, a grand baronet, a Mecca baronet, like everything has a baronet title. So it has a bit of a legacy. And then the last one is kind of a recent one. That was a title given to me by Lady MacGyver, I believe, when she was Duchess of Pegasus Valley. And that was the title of Sifu, which in the Kung Fu tradition, that's like your sensei or something like that for all the teaching. And it means, I think in Mandarin, it translates to teaching father, right? And that's a lot of, it's supposed to reflect all the stuff we do in Wormspire with like teaching people how to fight and helping people on the come up and stuff. And that just means a lot to me. Like Kung Fu is something that I've done for many years outside of Amtgard, and I personally like hold that a lot of weight with that title. So to have somebody look at us and look at me in that way, just like it really got me. So it's a cheater. I said 3, but that's my those are the 3 because I couldn't pick between one.
Those are 3 amazing ones, so I'll take it. Plus 20 years in the game, I feel like I can give you one award every 7 years. That's fine. All right, so let's bring it back to current day Amtgard. What would you say is your favorite kind of battle game?
I really like Gravity Throne and Ditching. Those are my favorite. But I understand under some rules of play, those aren't considered battle games, right? But in all seriousness, I like battle games that are, I don't have like a certain one that I am like, oh, it's this one, like I Capture the Flag or Rings of Power or anything like that. But I like battle games that have consistent action, that are pretty easy to understand, and that everybody by the end of the battle game is just exhausted, right? Yeah. Everybody's just like, oh my God, that was so much fun. I ran around and I fought and I fought and I fought. I don't really enjoy battle games with a lot of rules because I feel like it complicates the action a lot. So multiple objectives I think are awesome. Like if you have a role play objective, a fighting objective, and then maybe an objective that's like a skill-based objective, right? Like, I don't know, standing in a circle for a certain amount of time and running and going and getting a flag. I think games that combine those objectives are really fun too, right? Because they kind of give a lot of different avenues of victory. So if I had to go with an actual battle game, anything that does that would be great. If not, ditching or gravity throwing for sure.
So we're in a battle game and we're putting a sash on you. What color sash are we putting on?
First of all, you don't need a sash, bud, because I got my Black Phoenix on my belt.
Well,
all right.
Oh, I'm talking to a badass over here. My bad.
Hey, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'll let it slide.
All right. So anti-paladin.
Anti-paladin, yeah. I like that class because it traditionally sucks. Like it's supposed to be a badass class, right? Like you're supposed to already be good at fighting. Playing anti-paladin, at least that was kind of the theory in like V6 and V7, and now they made it actually like good, right? Mm-hmm. So I really like rolling around with some armor and a great sword. I don't use great swords very much in combat because they're just not effective in Amtgard very much.
Sure.
But they are if you put that poison strip on them, then they become devastating, right?
Yeah.
So I really like doing that and playing up the whole like Nazgul bad guy thing on the field. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I did not expect the great sword either. When you said that, it kind of blew my mind just now. But sure, I mean, you're free to do whatever you want. So
yeah, I mean, I really wish like that's something that I think. Actually, Amtgard can look at the other games like Dagahir and Belagarth and just kind of take that from those games. Like in those games, they are a lot more effective. And we are already sort of doing that. You know, you can hit a shield so many times before breaking it. But it's not super prevalent in Amtgard yet, right? In the Amtgard culture. So, but they're so fun, dude. They're just so fun to goof off with. And mostly when I play battle games, that's what I'm doing is goofing off and having a good time, right?
Yeah.
So I, running around with a huge sword and looking scary and acting scary is just a blast.
That's awesome. You got to appreciate that. All right. We're through the bare necessities, but there's still two questions that every week on Kingdom of Kodiak I ask. It's become a tradition.
All right.
Sir Glenelf has been promised a toaster.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know of this, and what can you do to help?
First of all, I am the toaster, okay? And I've brought it to Kingdom of Kodiak. Why? Because whether it's bats, raps, or craps, I bring the heat, all right? Y'all don't want this smoke. So, Chris, you don't need to look for your toaster anymore, but I'm right here, all right?
Wow, this is a first.
That was Chris Grinoff. You're Chris too, but Grinoff Chris.
Hey, so new ground has been broken on Kingdom of Kodiak. We know who the toaster is. Now we just got to figure out how to give them to Sir Glenelf.
To toast those buns, right?
Toast those buns.
Bring it together.
Okay. All right. Well,
Sir Anatole, baby. I'm sorry.
All right. Stillhut asks as a general question, what are your thoughts on bears?
Bears. Pro bear. Actually, there wouldn't be funny story. There wouldn't be wheel without bears, believe it or not. And then, this goes a little bit into like the wheel portion of this, but suffice to say, when one of the guys that helped us form Wheel, his name, old school knight, his name's Sir Cheshire. He kind of came to me and the other guy who were sort of the 1 and 2 of the founders of Wheel and asked us to be in a company. And he was this big badass knight, right? I think a sword knight from Burning Lands. Maybe he was Dragon's Point. I think he was Burning Lands. And we were like, oh my God, yes. We had stars in our eyes. And he's like, cool, because I already got an insignia. And we were like, awesome, dude, whatever. What is it? And he's like, okay, cannibal man bears. Like, what? Okay. He's like, yeah, bears that are also men that are also cannibals. Okay, we didn't want to like tell this guy, that's weird, bro.
Yeah.
It's super weird. And he was like, yeah, bet. Also, colors, figured it out. Great. Camouflage. All right, cool. So we were like down 100% for this like man bear cannibal camouflage company. And then like he moved to Virginia and we were like, you still want to do that? And Jeff's like, no, I don't want to do that. So we didn't go with that. But if it wasn't for Cheshire's love of bears and camouflage, there would probably still be a wheel, but we wouldn't have that story. So I'm totally pro bear.
Okay. I mean, I was willing to be all proud about that and be like, oh yeah, bears are the reason for the wheel. I don't want to take claim for it. All right, so that kind of gets us a little bit into your creation myth as far as amp garters goes. If you could continue with like how that became, and maybe let us know about the inside of amp guard, like mythos of the wheel.
First of all, if we're talking about myths, we were a baseball team, okay? And we played over there at Apodaca Park, our opposite Apodaca Park, and our pitching game sucked. Our catching game sucked. But we could hit things. We could hit things, not necessarily the ball, but we could hit each other with our bats. So once we saw the LARPers across the way, we decided to put down the gloves, put down the balls, trade the bats in for foam bats, and leave baseball forever, retire, basically undefeated and also having never competed. But that is the creation myth of the wheel that we typically tell people who want to know. In all actuality, it was me, Finnegan, who's Jeff. He plays up in, he sort of plays up in Pegasus Valley. Zoa Saber, who's Keegan down there in Las Cruces. Ilmrin, and Wild Hyacinth, who no longer plays Amp Guard, is no longer in Wheel. But the five of us founded Wheel, and mostly it came from, Dragonspine at the time. This is like in 2000, like late 90s, 2000s and stuff, like you said. We had a reputation for being terrible fighters. Like our kingdom was widely renowned for being pretty backwater when it came to fighting.
Okay.
A lot of people still used techniques and fought the way they did in like the early and mid 90s, right? And that had just never moved forward. There had been like sword knights, like Deathstalker is a Dragonspine sword knight, and Foshan, extremely iconic Dragonspine sword knight, Chiz, that knew how to fight, but for some reason that knowledge never really like took hold. Right. And I think it's because mostly those guys had to move, or they had like life stuff going on after they got knighted, right? So we all really, we were going to Clan, we were going to Rakkus, and we got a little bit of salt thrown our way for being Dragonspine fighters, and we were like, this is BS. And we got sick of it, and I like to think it's like New Mexicans in general, like not good at a whole lot of things, right? We don't have a football team. We don't have a basketball, like a major basketball team. We have a soccer team now. But one of the things that New Mexicans are like renowned for, both in MMA and boxing, is fighting. New Mexico produces fighters, right?
Sure.
So a bunch of these scrappy little New Mexican kids from Las Cruces got together and just started fighting all the time. And we kind of became a company that way. But yeah, that's kind of how it got going.
Okay. So as far as the mythos goes, as you as a baseball team, what position was Anatole playing?
I'm the umpire.
You're the umpire?
Yeah, I make the calls.
Okay. You make the calls?
I'm number one, I make the calls. Yeah, that's my position.
All right. I'm going to have to get at Sane about this because I've known him for a little bit now, and I still have never heard the baseball story. So well,
that's because it's a lie.
Well,
and he's your friend and probably doesn't want to lie to you.
Well, okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Or is it, right?
What are you doing to me right now? All right. So what about that? What about the heraldry? Let's
the heraldry wheel?
Yeah, everyone who's in Dragonspine has seen the wheel.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of insight to that, the color scheme or the design, what have you.
So after we were like, sweet, we don't have to do camouflage and like man-eating bears no more. Uh, we we kind of discussed a few different colors, and if you see, like, Shion has the original wheel tunic. The original colors were green and white and gold, um, but a lot of us didn't like it, and instead, a lot of us liked Amy's colors, her personal colors,
Oh, okay.
which were like maroon and tan and black. And we were like, damn, that's pretty dope. That's pretty dope. And we came up with some meaning behind that. You know, red is for the fighting aspect, right? Because we are a fighting company. And we were like rah about that, really about that back in the day. The tan is to represent the desert, right? Because that's where we come from. That's our roots, in the low desert. And the black is because it's inclusive, right? It's all colors, everything together, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's the colors. We had a few different symbols, and we found one we really liked, which was a flaming wheel that was, I think, in an Anomine, which was a role-playing game about angels. And one of like the choirs of angels was the Ophanim, and they were the fiery wheels or something like that. And we liked that symbol, and it was like this intricate thing. And we went to Ben and Amy, who were like our Amp Guard dad and mom, and we were like, "Hey, can we sew that?" Or and Amy was like, "Let's see if you can sew this." And no, we couldn't. We couldn't sew it. It had way too many points. It was way too complicated. So we were a bit dejected. And then Amy came home one day, and she had this beach towel she got from her union. And I think it was APSME. And on the beach towel were all these little barbed wheels all over this beach towel, imprinted, I think, or silk screened on there.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, check it out. It's a fiery wheel. Also, this is way easier to sew. And we gave it a shot. We sewed it. And we were like, done. So our symbol comes from a beach towel that I think's like in a closet in Amy's house somewhere. And
Okay.
yeah, that's what that means.
So one of the most prestigious fighting companies in Amtgard, and they're a baseball team with a beach towel logo. Was not expecting any of that. Okay, awesome. There was a question put up about how did you change the perception of a group of kids starting off to the leaders of fighting in Amtgard?
Well, that's a weird question, right? Because it's like, I still feel like that kid. I think a lot of us still feel like those kids, right? I think, though, one of the things we did, like growing up in Las Cruces, there just wasn't anything to do, right? Like, Amtgard was the thing we did really to kind of like stay out of trouble. And we had people like Ben and Amy that were super nice to newbies, which wasn't very common back in those days. Super, like, not a lot of the older guard didn't really make Amtgard a super welcoming, or I would say even safe place for children, right? So we had Ben and Amy, who definitely did their utmost to make it safe for children, and make Amtgard a place where kids can go and feel comfortable and find something that they're super passionate about. And we just fought all the damn time. We fought all the damn time, and we kind of had chips on our shoulders. We didn't like going to places and being like, oh, the dragon spying kids, like,
Right.
they suck, right? We didn't like that. So we didn't have a sword knight per se, or a warlord, or anybody like that was teaching us anything. So the way we got around that is we just fought. We fought all the time. We fought 5 days a week, sometimes a full 7 days a week. It's because there wasn't anything else to do, right? It's not like the internet was a big thing back then, and we had older people that engendered this sort of environment that we could do that. But like me and Finn used to used to fight in the parking lot of our high school during lunch. Like we were just gripped with it. We're super into fighting. So we kept fighting. We kept going to events. It really helped that clan, or I'm sorry, Gathering of the Crowns was right there in our backyard in Ruidoso, right? So that was the one thing we did get to do, is that was a really big fighting event. So we got to go there and see what good fighting looked like, right? And then take that back to Dragonspine, where nobody fought like that, and sort of play with those ideas for like a year, right? So I wouldn't say it's any like one thing, but we definitely fought a whole bunch, and we definitely had people that made Amtgard a safe place to fight a whole bunch, because we were just kids,
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it's what we're trying to foster across the game now, is what you guys got to experience with Sir Randall and Dame Azrael Jade, having that safe place to be. So that's awesome.
And I think we were lucky. I want to say that. I think we were really lucky in that respect, considering a lot of the other elders in our community and in our local Amtgard community, and then just in general, especially back in the day, back in the old days, or whatever you want to call it. But I think we were super lucky to have those guys.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Stillhelt wanted to know, what do you expect out of people who wish to join your company?
For Wheel, it's way less of an Amtgard thing. Like, first of all, you need to be playing Amtgard, right? Mm-hmm. You can be a great fighter, but if you're not playing Amtgard, like we are an Amtgard company, right? Even though a lot of our members don't really play Amtgard anymore, they're still involved in Wheel, though. But for us, Wheel kind of transcends Amtgard a little bit, because so many of us have known each other for 20 plus years. We grew up with each other, mm-hmm. right? For us, it's a personality thing. You can be great at fighting or not great at fighting, but if you're somebody that we feel fits with what we look for in a personality and clicks, that's kind of the most important thing to us.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
She also wanted to know if you could give us a roll call, essentially. Let us know about the people that are in the Wheel.
Wow. Okay. So we have, which is crazy to think about, we have 20 members in Wheel. Our most recent member of Wheel was actually the first person we've ever made a Wheel out that didn't initially or originally start Amtgard in New Mexico, and that's Squire Morpheus. He lives out in Polaris in Minnesota. Then we got Chase, we got Aqua, we got Royce, we got Baihu, the 18-wheeler. We got he was number 18, obviously. Right? We've got Shion, we've got myself, Finnegan, we've got Azrael, Jade, Glenolf, Balder, we've got Tiwaz, who doesn't really play that much. We've got Glenn and Zoa. Jester is one of ours. Fudge, man. Now I know I'm gonna forget some of my homies, and I'm gonna take flack for this.
Well, you didn't say Kyle. You didn't say Kyle or Charles.
We do have, yeah. Well, I was getting to them, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we have Sir Sane, we have Sir Elmrin, we have Relcor. Yeah, it's weird, right? Because it's like we get together and we hang out, and some of these guys we haven't seen. We have Belthol, who now lives in the Kingdom of Polaris. He was their second Knight of the Sword, their first warlord up there. But it's weird, right? Because it's this thing where when we all get together and we all hang out, like I said, we all still feel like kids for the most part, right? And that's something that Wheel has had, and really that's why the personality fit is so so special to us and so important to us is because we want to maintain that intimacy. We want to maintain, we were a really small company for a very, very long time. It's only kind of been recently that we've sort of turned into a much larger company. And that's very new to us. So one of the things that we, you know, when that was happening, we really wanted to make sure of is that we kept things real tight. You know, we kept that sense of being a small company, because I think that's really important for companies in general. If you want to foster this sense of camaraderie, of closeness, it really helps to just like only have a handful of members for like 10 years.
Right.
Right. I forgot Firen's in there too. I don't know if that's 20 to any of the homies that I forgot. I deeply apologize. Oof. You know, I love you.
Yeah. No, we're not going to point it out or anything next week of all the people you missed.
Oh,
you know, no big deal. All right. Sarai wanted to know, what are your goals for the group, individuals in the group, and then you personally?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Goals for the group. I think, you know, just kind of like what I just said, like my hope for Wheel is that Wheel continues to have the close-knit camaraderie that we've always had. And we've been extremely lucky, extremely lucky. We're like any company. We've had our own dramas, and we've had some people we've had to kick out or whatever. But for the most part, we've managed to overcome those struggles and maintain this really tight-knit familial sort of group. And I love that. Like these people are my family, right? My chosen family. You know, I got ink to prove it too, you know?
Right.
So my goal is just like whatever way we go, whether we stay a really prevalent fighting company or don't, as long as we got each other, I think we're good. You know,
awesome.
I think that's really all of us really want. For members in the company, goals for them is just to, you know, the reason we chose a wheel, the reason we wanted that symbology is because we really liked the idea of always continuing to improve, constantly rolling, constantly seeking new ways to improve yourself, not only in AmpGuard, but as a person, you know, as a human being. So all my goal, you know, for any of the members, that's all I want from them, right? That's all I want, is just to adhere to that philosophy and try and be the best person they can be every single day in and out of the game, right? And for myself, just to, you know, just to enjoy this. You know, I feel like I'm super lucky to know all these people, and every one of the members of Wheel has had a huge impact on my life and continues to, and I consider myself very privileged to have such good friends and family around me and to be able to rely on them. So I guess my goal is to be able to always reciprocate that and always be my best for them.
That's a great goal. That's awesome. You are one of those people too that you can feel the love whenever you guys are around each other. If you've ever seen any set of wheels together at any event, it is best friends doing best friend things, and you know, it's amazing. So
and that's
really
the way
cool.
It's always been. That's the way it's been that way from day one, you know. So for those of you that are thinking about creating your own company, you know, you want something that lasts, make sure that friendship thing is first and foremost, you know.
Okay, that's awesome. Are there any household activities or company activities that are planned for gatherings and whatnot? Or
well, there are, but this whole pandemic thing sure makes that difficult, right?
Sure.
Typically, we have 2 meetings per year. One meeting is at the Gathering of the Crowns, which is our big one of I guess we have 2 big meetings, 2 big like official meetings, right? And one of those is at the Gathering of the Crowns. every year. And then the other is in January. And in January, we all drive to Socorro, New Mexico, and we meet in a park there in Socorro, New Mexico. And we do our other big meeting and we play wacky games. We play wacky bat games and act the fool and hang out and stuff like that. So that one's been really fun because like there's no amp guard going on there except when we show up once a year in January, and suddenly like we're the deepest skill park in the game for that one day, you know?
Yeah, right.
But we just like goof off, you know, we like goof off and run around and act like a bunch of fools, and it's great. Other than that, we try and hang out. We've been trying to do these like monthly hangout things once every month, but COVID has made that very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, I think those are the two big events, the two big things we do.
Yeah. GOTC is a great place to have group meetings because that's a lot of people from all over the place are coming to it. So
for sure,
cool.
man.
Yeah. So how do you maintain a positive outlook for your members inside of the wheel? I mean it's a friendship, but how like if someone's down, what are we doing to bring their spirits up?
If someone's down, I mean, the response, generally everybody knows about it, right? Like a lot of people say, you know, when they're talking about maybe their fraternity or their sorority or some other group, they're like, oh, that's my family, you know, whatever. Like that's big for us, you know? So if somebody's down, we have created a space and relationships where people can talk about things freely, right? And they can go to members of the company or the company as a whole and say like, hey, I need help. Rashad, I freaking forgot Rashad. I knew I forgot somebody.
I was gonna blow you
Rashad.
up.
Sorry, buddy.
I was gonna blow you up at the end of this, but
dang, dude, I almost fudged up. Joe, I apologize immensely. You know I love you, baby. But I think Wheel is a place in a group that anybody, if they're down, if they need help, they can go to any one of us. Mm-hmm. You know, we've helped each other out in the past. We're going to help each other out in the future. You know, like I said, it kind of transcends amp guard.
Sure, absolutely.
So we've needed help with amp guard projects. Boom, Wheel is there. You know, we have a rule actually that if Amy asks for help ever, the whole company mobilizes. Right?
Love it.
So that's just like an example, but it's that way for anybody in the company.
That's all. I didn't know that was a rule, but the way that it's spoken of seemed like it would be very obvious that would be yeah, we're there.
Yeah, when Amy calls, you come hell or high water, dude, and the creek don't rise, you're there.
Yeah,
for sure.
The wheel symbol hits the sky and everyone assembles.
Yeah.
Right.
Just blows the conch shell, right?
Right. So can you give us like the wheel has a historic history to it, but can you give us like one or two, maybe three like highlights of your company over your time with the wheel?
Well, this one's not so much a memory. There's so many, right? Because it's like I was there at the beginning, you know, I was one of the founding members. So there are so many moments from individuals and then as a company. There's one very recently, as of, I think tonight, so I guess this isn't a memory yet, but it is something that I'm very happy about. I'm very proud of my company for, and that is we decided that Wheel is a company that we do dues. Okay. We every so often, like every 6 months or something, like members are expected to pay dues, right? And we've been sitting on some dues in our coffers for a couple of years now, a year or so. And then usually that stuff is used for getting people that need help to go to events. When we make new members, we want them to, you know, we want them to shine, you know, so we
Right.
make them tunics and shields and gear and all that kind of stuff. And for other projects, but you know, a lot of that stuff is dependent upon whether AmpGuard is happening, right? And it's not right now. And going back to our colors thing, you know, that black means unity. It means all inclusive, right?
Yeah.
So what we decided to do is take all of our coffers right now, and we decided to donate it to two organizations, to two charities.
Wow.
And the first is for a LGBTQT charity, support charity, and the other is, which I forget the name of course, right, when I'm on the spot.
Right.
And the other one is the Innocence Project, which helps people that are incarcerated, helps them receive funds for bail, for legal counsel, to get them out of jail. So we took all our coffers, we decided this like this week, and we're just like, screw it, you know, let's do something that reflects what we believe in, you know, morally, ethically. And so we took all our coffers, and I think tonight by like 8 o'clock, our financial officer is just going to throw off all our coffers to those. So I am extremely proud of that. I'm extremely proud of all the wheels for supporting that. That was a really cool thing. We've never done anything like that before on that scale. So that's something I'm immensely proud of my company for right now.
That is amazing. That's
Thanks.
incredible.
Yeah.
Anyone that's watching this, if you see a wheel member and they approve of it, please give them a hug and a thank you when you get a chance. If they don't want a hug, hearty handshake or pat on the back and thank you still works. That's incredible. That's great.
Or better yet, do something yourself, right? Like,
well,
if you want, if you really want to give props, like, yeah, high fives and hugs are great, but you know, it's a really tough time in the country right now, and you know, there's many paths to helping out. So just because you wear a funny blouse and pretend to be a wizard on the weekends doesn't mean you can't, you know, contribute your little piece to justice, to equality, to fighting hate, right?
Not to take away from how epic that is, but are there a couple more highlights that you'd be willing to talk about, or should that be the shining moment that we move on from?
See, there's like a lot, right? Like,
yeah.
Personally, we've done a couple of mazes. We've run a couple of mazes that were just stupid fun for us, right? Like maze, if you're a dragon spiner and you're coming up in Las Cruces, like maze is a very special little event, you know? And we've run a couple of those, and every time we run a maze, we really try and make some cool props, right? And this one year we did Greek mythology was the whole like theme of the event, and we made a hydra. we made a hydra, and so like a bunch of us all roped each other together, and we got big sticks of pool noodle, right? That all had these different animal heads, like foam animal heads on them. And so they were like, how many heads are there in the hydra? Are there 9, 7, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, cut 1, 2, spread out, whatever. So there were like 7 or 8 or 9 of us all tied together in the dark with like, just kind of like, with this like, one pool noodle had like a giraffe head, the other had like a dragon, the other had like a fish. And we, of course, because we're a bunch of jackwagons, like started fighting amongst ourselves in the corn. And like mine, I remember like I hit one of my buddies, and we had like sticks in them so they would stay up. And so the whole idea is like you could look above the corn and you would see this massive, you know, it didn't matter that it was a fish head or a giraffe head. All you saw was this big neck with like a silhouette, right?
Right.
And I hit one of the homies and the neck snapped. So for from that point on, like there was this mass of heads, and there was this one kind of like
A little derpy fish head or whatever.
yeah. And so like moments like those for me that are like innocuous or silly, they just kind of like go down in our history and our legends and stuff like that, right? Like and there's a million of them. There's a million stories. That's why it's hard to choose just like one or two, you know.
Okay, well then I'm going to choose one for you that's not a real one.
Sure.
Dame Azrael Jade's vigil for her last nighting before we went to White Sands.
Yeah.
Sir Shion brings out the book.
Yes.
The history book. And I encourage anyone who gets an opportunity to look at this to do. This is the history. That was a big moment for, as a new player. I was spanking new at that point. Like to see something like that and be like, oh, I'm doing Amp Guard the rest of my life because look at these memories, you know?
Eric's mom makes those. And that also kind of gives you a little bit of an insight into just like how long we've all been involved in this thing. Mm-hmm. You know, Eric's a grown ass man, but his mom has like been making these like photo album, like historic wheel history books. I have one, and she makes one, you know, if one of the wheels asks her, like it's a custom one. So I have one for me, that's mine. That's a little bit different from Eric's. You know, and she puts, I mean, like they're so cool, man. She puts so much time and effort into those, and she personalized. I know Sane has one, so I think there are like 3 or 4 rolling around right now. But yeah, those are dope.
Those are intense.
Dope. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like we're talking about your growth in Amp Guard right now, and we're talking about these kids tonight, and for a lot of the Amp Guarders that are playing now, you guys have always been either top tier fighters, knights, leadership, what have you. But now you're getting to look back at when the struggle was still very real. And,
right.
It still gives you a lot of hope as a new player to be like, hey, like these were all like children doing this at one point. And hey,
how are you?
Hey. But yeah, that's one of mine. I guess I get to say something about the wheels, so that was cool. So Zana asks, the wheel is on one team of a battle game or what have you.
Okay.
Can you describe what that would look like for a battle game? Like maybe who's your frontline fighter? Who's going off the sides and skirmishing? Who's your casters if you have them?
Yeah, I mean, so unfortunately, because wheel typically has a lot of the fighting skill, you know, we don't really ever get to be on the same team.
Right.
It's, you know, kind of thing with us that like a few of us totally will be on the same team, but I don't know if we've ever fought in a battle game on one side, all of us together, unless it was at an event, right?
Right.
We've done like jugging teams and stuff like that, but that's also, you know, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about Wheel, and you know, it is a fighting company, but that's only one part of it. We have members that are really good at battle games, right? We have like Balder and Glenolf are super good at battle games. Belful is super good at battle games, right? Even Sane, like Sane for being like a guy that can swing stick with the best of them, you know, he plays a pretty mean battle game. So I think for our casters, Balder, can I let my dog out?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a problem. No, it's fine. Actually, it brings up one of the things. One of the questions for later was misconception. And I think the misconception that Sir Anatole's hitting on is that even though that they're a fighting company, they do have some magic users that are, you know, fantastic. So we were just about to get that breakdown for the baseball team.
Yeah. So shortstop, you know, no. Yeah, and I'll be honest, like Eric throws a mean spell ball. He played a lot of dodgeball, I guess, and his arm, that kid has an arm, dude. So he's like a really good spell ball wizard because he just pegs people.
Right.
But if we're talking like general makeup, I think we'd have Balder, Linolf, Belthel, because Belthel's a really good caster, kind of leading the spell casting thing. I would put myself as a fighter. Okay. Spell casting is complicated, and I don't like to read on Saturdays, so I'll just smash. Right. I'll tank it up. I'll fight. Sane, I would probably put as a fighter as well, and that's because he is ridiculously good with a suit of. In fact, he's terrifying with armor on. If he's fighting Florentine with his reach and his athleticism and armor, he's a monster. He's terrifying. And actually, I would put Eric not as a spellcaster. I would put Shion as a fighter, but he would be a skirmisher.
Okay.
One of the things that was like real prevalent back in the day is as a sword knight had, like, you didn't have to be a warlord to be a sword knight, right? And battlefield prowess and all that was a lot more considered for sword knight in those days. Eric is like one of the best 1v mini fighters I've ever seen. So is Ilmrin, right? And Ilmrin was a super good spellcaster as well. But both those guys were just like on fleek fighting multiple opponents. They can kite them. They're both real athletic. They move around a lot. They get people to chase them, and they just rip up teams, right? Baihu, he would be a caster. He gets down on the casting thing. Joe, Rashad, if you didn't know, is pretty handy with a pole. So I would give him like a spear or something like that. Azriel Jade would be our coach because we do our best work when she's yelling at us. And we are feeling like the mom, like, don't fuck this up for me kind of a thing, like back to the orphanage, you know? Like, we do our best work when we're terrified, right? Ismail, Morpheus would probably be a fighter with me. So I think, you know, with 20 people, it's not hard to like feel the team and
sure, absolutely.
You know? And then we could fill in the rest of the guys as necessary. We started as like, the whole idea was we were going to be like a skirmishy team. We really liked that when we first got wheeled together, and there were like 5 or 6 of us. We were like, oh, we want to be like Velociraptor tactics, you know, and skirmishing and stuff like that. And then we all got good at fighting, and then we never got to be on the same team. So, yeah.
I mean, personally, I would love to see an all-wheel team and to fight against. I try to find Sane anytime we're in a ditch line. Mm-hmm. I know I'm going to get ran over, but he's
so good.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to get ran over. So
he's
whatever.
He's so good. Guys that know how to use their reach are just so like, it's devastating. Usually I don't have to be the shorter guy in most fights.
Right.
And then when I fight Sane, it's like, this is what I've been doing to people. This is awful. This is terrible. I hate this.
He has me by like that much in height. So
yeah, you're a tall guy too, man. Yeah. You're a tall guy too. When we fought, I had to kind of like, it always takes me a little while because I've got like my tall guy swag on with my, 6 foot nothing, and then I fight somebody that can hit me from a state away. I'm like, hold on, something. Is he using a long sword or what?
Right.
What's this?
Is that 39 inches long? What the hell?
That doesn't seem regulation.
Yeah. All right. Zachary wanted you to give an opportunity to give a shout out to some of the groups that the wheel has helped along the way. So maybe just, we talked to the Valkyries, and they obviously feel like you're their brother company.
Yeah,
you're taking care of them. Are there some others that you'd like to point out?
Yeah, there've been a handful throughout the years, and I'm gonna do a terrible job remembering all of them. I think one of them was the Necro Sages, but it all comes from this, like, kind of going back in our history. When Wheel was formed, there were a lot more company battles.
Mm-hmm.
And they were awful. They were just like toxic, and they weren't run well, and people had a lot of like kind of let's go beat up the kids kind of mentality going on. And we didn't, as a reaction to that, and then a lot of those companies fell away, right? A lot of those companies just dissolved. And so we were like, we don't want to be like that. We want to foster healthy competition. We want to foster a sense that like we can have a company battle and we compete, but we don't, it doesn't have to be this big antagonistic thing. You know what I'm saying? And so when there's a company out there who we like, who we think, you know, represents a lot of the things that we consider, the virtues we consider important, you know, we try and help them out a little bit and help them grow. Because we had a lot of help. Like Ben and Amy wasn't originally in Wheel. When we asked Amy to be in Wheel, she was like, hell no, you guys are just trying to trick me to make your tunics. We were like, okay, guilty as charged, but also we like you. So she wanted to see us kind of grow up a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But we eventually got her. But like, if it weren't for Ben and Amy, and if it weren't for other people like them, you know, sort of like we were talking about fostering a certain environment and for kids and stuff, like it probably wouldn't be a Wheel. You know, it definitely wouldn't look like what it is now. So we want to, you know, we've always thought it would be important to pay that back, you know. So we help people like buy tunics, or we help a company with events or something like that. When the Valkyries did Lucha, which is, by the way, an amazing fighting event and teaching event, strictly for women who fight. The only thing Wheel does is we just provide lunch, right? That's all we do. So we really appreciate and we really like being able to help other companies out that are just, you know, getting started or getting their feet underneath them the way we got helped.
Right. Not to take away from the seriousness of that, but it does kind of fit the scheme of the baseball lore and also knowing how to work a grill. So
there you go. Yeah. You spend enough time in the dugout, you learn how to work a grill.
Right. Yeah. If coach benches you better be good on the grill. That's what it is. All right. So we got a couple more questions about the Wheel, and then we're actually going to get to the knighthood questions, I promise. So Sir Glenn Mop had asked a couple weeks ago, but I like the question. What are you doing specifically to keep your fighting edge while we're in quarantine?
Oh, man. I'm doing a few different things. Right now, I have my man-at-arms who I spar with a couple times a week. But that's kind of only been a very recent thing. And that was after like a lot of deliberation, because I wanted, you know, it's really important that it's safe right now. As much as I love wax, as much as I love fighting, and fighting is a deep passion of mine, you know, it's priorities, right? So we had to talk about it, me and my man-at-arms. His name is Unknown. His name has never been uncovered, I guess.
Oh, yes.
I'm just going to call him Brian. Me and Brian have been sparring a couple times a week. And that's been kind of cool, honestly, because it's like usually this time of the year, I'm really trying to like compete at events and in tournaments and stuff. And right now it's kind of that's not happening, right? So I get to focus on him. We get to focus on developing him. So by teaching, it kind of keeps me sharp, and by giving ideas. And we do our like sparring session. We talk about things afterward. That helps me keep sharp. Other than that, you know, you got to figure out what you can control in this moment, right? So what can I control? I can control my physical fitness, right? I can take this time and I can decide, all right, is this going to be time where I just take a break because I need to take a break, which is totally okay? Or is this a time that I can use to improve other aspects of either my athleticism, my fitness, or my technique, So I've decided to try and improve my fitness, my athleticism, and my technique, right? I have certain drills I do on my Pel, which is just a punching bag, right? I do footwork stuff on my agility ladder. I do stuff like jump rope. I've taken up running, right? Because I think the way AmpGuard, high tier AmpGuard fighting is going, is cardio and explosive power generation are very important, right? So my workouts are now tailored to fit that a little bit more. Stuff like shadow boxing, and the big thing is I just try and do something every day, right? I try and do one drill or spend 15 minutes a day doing something that traditionally I haven't paid a lot of focus to. So like a lot of left hand pelling, right? A lot of flexibility work, right? Doing yoga and stuff like that. But that, that may not be everybody, definitely you don't have to like go to those crazy levels if you don't want to, right? Doing stuff like watching tape, it's a little bit every day, just watch some fights, throw them on, it gets this going, right? And while the physical stuff is all good, if you're not complementing it with the mental work, is kind of all for naught, right? Like you can be as good as you possibly can be at hitting the Pel, but the Pel, A, never moves it, and B, never hits back. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
So Bruce Lee adage.
Yeah, right. Yep. The bag never hits back, right?
Yep.
So like just engaging your mind every day and making it a point to engage your mind every day, and find something interesting to think about fighting related helps a lot, so I do a mix of things. Short answer.
But, short answer. Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about Unknown a little bit later here when we get to Knighthood. But the last question inside of the wheel, and you touched on this a little bit with having some casters in your fighting company, but what are some of the other misconceptions that people might think when they hear the wheel come up?
Well, I think that's the big one is a lot of people think that we are, they'll see me or they'll see Shion or they'll see Sane at an event or Bethel at an event and, we're fighting and doing our thing and they see that wheel and they assume, like that's all we're about. Right. But the wheel encompasses all, we've always wanted it to encompass all aspects of AmpGuard. Right. And that's reflected in our membership. Right. Just because, like the fighters kind of have the glamour job, right? Like we get the glamour, we get the celebrity, but like, if you look at all the work that people like Azriel, people like Glenolf, people like Boulder have done for AmpGuard, like those guys are helping keep the game going. Those guys are helping keep this game alive. Then you want to talk about all the people like Baihu as well. Then you have the arts and sciences aspect of it. Amy's a Serpent Knight. Brian and Ismail, like those guys could be Serpent Knights. I really believe that. Shion is a pretty damn good, like he's solid, right? Mm-hmm. So is Balder, and all the guys want to be multidimensional, right? We like to celebrate any passion anybody has for something in AmpGuard, and we try and support that a lot, right? So, I mean, that's the big one, right? I think the other misconception is that like we are all and this is going to sound somewhat elitist, but like that's companies, right? Yeah. Is that like we really care about what people are good at in AmpGuard. Like, again, for us, it's the personality. It's, are you a fit with what we believe in, right? Like you could be bad at everything, right? But if the heart's there, that's the most important thing,
Right.
you know. And I think that's where a lot of the members, their success stems from, is because they have that passion for Amtgard, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's probably just the fighting company thing, honestly.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, so that's the wheel, but you're not here just for the wheel.
No.
You're here for a nightly chat as
Okay.
well. And we got some questions for that.
Hey, mommy.
Dame Annabelle Lee wanted to know about how much time you dedicated to Amtgard to getting your belt. And I wanted to kind of add to that a little bit. How much time after you decided that you wanted the belt was there before you got the belt?
That's a bit of a weird. So that's a weird question for me because I never thought I'd be a sword knight.
There you go. That's what I was hoping to hear out of you, actually.
Yeah, I was real. You know, I was Randall's page, and then I was Randall's squire. I had done King twice. I had done a bunch of other offices, like, and we had a lot of the guys that we started out with. You know, Finnegan, Ilmrin, Fyron, Shion, that were really walking that sword path and walking it well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And doing really good. I was like a kid who's like, high school sport was Dungeons and Dragons,
Sure.
right? Like I was like, I'm not going to be a fighter, you know, I'm not going to be a sword knight, never. So it's kind of weird because I became good at fighting because all my friends were fighting, and I'm a naturally competitive person, right? But it's also like, it was super fun, and that's all we had to do in Las Cruces. So I got a lot of time in, right, with guys that were really athletically inclined and kind of already getting good at fighting, right? They were just my best friends, and I was just kind of there. Right. You know what I mean? I really thought I was going to be a crown knight, and I worked really, really like hard to be one, but my heart was never into it.
Okay.
The way, like, I never experienced the same joy with that as I did with fighting. I had fun, and I don't regret those times at all. I think I did an okay job, but like my passion wasn't in office, you know. I just didn't have the same love for it, right, that I did for fighting. But I did put in a lot of work. Like I said, I did a bunch of offices. And then I just kind of started winning tournaments, right? And even then it didn't really like click for me. And I think I got my Warlord in 2009, and I got my Sword Knight 6 months later.
Right.
So it was like a weird kind of like bam, bam sort of a thing.
Was there an aha moment in there though, where like you realized, hey, like I need one more win at a kingdom level, and they could make me a warlord, or they could belt me?
I think it was when I got my Warlord. Okay. When I got my Warlord, I was it was like very unreal to me because I had struggled with thinking that I was worth it, right? Struggled at thinking that I was good enough, that I could represent very well. Again, there hadn't been any Dragonspine Sword Knights for 10 years, right, prior to me and Kyle. So when I got my Warlord, I got it at the Gathering of the Crowns, and it was given to me by Ilmrin, who was already a Warlord at that time. And that point, at that moment, it was like, holy crap, this is happening. Mm-hmm. You know, up to that point, it was kind of just like I win tournaments, whatever. But there's still like a bunch of killers around me. There's a bunch of like really good fighters around me. They're going to get it, you know, they're going to do it. But yeah, probably that moment I was just like, well, and it wasn't work. That was the thing. Like the offices were work, you know, the offices were very challenging and rewarding in their own way, but that was work. Fighting was just fun. Fighting was just like what we did for fun and to stay out of trouble, you know? So it wasn't until that moment that it all kind of like hit me, you know?
Right. It's a very unique place to be because people are joining Amtgard because they want to fight. Mm-hmm. And your story essentially is we were fighting so that we didn't get in trouble. And AmpGuard was kind of around us while it was happening. We were
right.
yeah.
Right.
So that's super good. And it explains a lot of your guys' mentality towards fighting and also the process, because I did kind of lead you when I asked the question about when you knew it was a thing, because I know that for you guys specifically, it was, we just fought and it happened,
Right.
so but I wanted to get out there to the people who are listening and people, whoever will watch this, that this is one of those instances where if you just, you just do it, and eventually it could just click,
and enjoy it like that.
Yeah.
Just to add to what you're saying, I agree with everything you said, but I think to enjoy it, is the key. I think so. It's weird talking about this and not going into other tangents, right?
Sure.
Because I have a lot of perspective now that I didn't have back then. But I think that there is a tendency for people to try too hard, right? And to forget to have fun and forget to acknowledge the intrinsic value of AmpGuard, right? Like, sure, there are awards and there are honors and laurels that you can rest on in glory to be won, but like, you got to love this thing first. If you are not loving this, you're only sabotaging it. Like, if you're in it for the award, you're going to sabotage your own happiness, right? Because once I believe that once you become a knight, that's kind of like an office you take for life, right? That you are an example of AmpGuard. You have a responsibility to AmpGuard, right? And if that's not your thing, okay, but don't take the belt, right? And I think people get a little too caught up in the award sometime without just having fun, without like saying, what do I want to do today? Do I want to like try super hard and ditch and like do a bunch of first ins? Or do I want to be a goofy anti-paladin and run around with a great sword in a park, like chasing, kids around?
Yeah.
Fun is so important,
You got to have the smile. I think it's, like our last reign, not to make this about me because it's not about me, but a real quick side story. Anyone in our kingdom who is playing Dice on a Drum currently, you have us to thank for it. Sir Randall, Sir Say, and myself, like, yeah, we could have went out and played more battle games in that park day, but we found another way to be fun with each other and just enjoy each other's company and
be creative and connect. That's a perfect example. Perfect example of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's super fun. Lady Stillhut wanted to know how you feel about the separation of non-male fighters as their own tournaments and their own process towards sword knights.
That is one that my opinion has changed over the years, right? And as it is now, I believe, yes, I believe that we should have separate tournaments for separate non-male tournaments. And I do believe that that is a path that should be a path to Warlord. And if Warlord is still a path to Sword Knight, boom, make it all like that, right? I think I used to be like a real like cold dead hands kind of a guy, especially with Warlord, but that's changed, right? I think that while having adequate competition and having, this expectation is not inherently bad, but I think that you have to be realistic and say, okay, what's gonna produce more fighters? What's gonna produce better fighting? More people fighting, more people able to teach fighting, more people that are going to be passionate about fighting, more people that are going to be willing to take the sport and push it to new levels that it's never been to. And you can't do that if you're gatekeeping, really, right? Now, I'm really proud of the caliber of fighters that our B-level fighters, like our second tier, could easily be very dominant warlords and sword knights in other kingdoms, right? Mm-hmm. So we do have that, and that is one benefit of having a system that's kind of cold dead hands, right? But you can't do that for everybody. You can't apply one blanket rule, right? So I think yes, I support non-male tournaments as a path towards warlord and sword knight, but I do not support only male tournaments. I think that if any person that does not identify as a male wants to go fight in a male, in you know what I'm saying, like a weapon master that's not specifically denoted as non-male, they should be able to, yep. Right? Because it's about bringing up this over here, non-male fighters, right, and supporting fighting, right, and growing it, but it's also about bridging the gap if we can, yep. Right? And I do think that is possible. But we need to do this first, yeah, absolutely. And we need to make it, and it needs to be respected, right? It needs to be respected. So yes.
Okay. I figured it was going to be a very stern and straightforward answer. I love it. I was going to ask an additional, but I think you drove the point home. I don't think I need to even address it. So thank you for that.
Okay, cool.
A question was asked about what the trigger was between being a mid-tier fighter and a warlord. We kind of talked about that a little bit, but was there, it may not have been a level of Order of the Warrior or anything like that, but was there something between you when you started getting towards the top of it where you were like, you could see the growth yourself?
Yeah, but I didn't really give it a lot of I didn't pay it a lot of mind. And again, it's mostly a lot of my own kind of like insecurities, right, at that time in my life, where I never envisioned myself being a great fighter or whatever. I envisioned myself as running for king a bunch of times and doing all this other stuff. So like, as I got better, it was kind of just funny to me, it's just kind of like funny and fun and like, oh, check it out. I got my like 7th and 8th and I got my 9th. Like I didn't see that as a reflection of my own ability. I saw that more as a reflection of the people that I were around. Mm-hmm. Right. And it was easier to accept that, right? It was easier to accept that for myself. So not really. I really didn't pay much attention to it till I got my warlord. Since I got my warlord and my sword knight, it's become a lot different. But up to that point, it was like, it was cool. It was cool to be able to like go to events and compete with people that I had never competed with, or that I had never been able to really like take it to. But it was just fun and games for me at that point,
Okay. So we're talking about you as a sword knight. We're talking about you as an elite fighter. You're looking at the ball of clay that is a new player. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing from a new player where you are like, with training, this is a candidate for sword knight? What are some of the things you want to see out of a new player?
The first thing is you have to love it, and I don't mean to be like redundant, and keep coming back to that, but you have to just love fighting. You have to love competition on some level. And despite the obstacles in your life, despite the obstacles in the game, you gotta love it. Whether you're in a big kingdom and you have like a set structure to compete against, you got that warlord or you got that sword knight that's holding it down, that's providing that bar, right? And you got all these mid-tier people that you need to run through, like whether you have that or whether you're in a shire of 3 people, right? Like you just, first and foremost, you have to love fighting. if you love the idea of fighting more than the actual like contest,
yeah,
you can get okay, but you're never going to be good. You're never going to be great, right? Like for us that are considered higher tier warlords or top tier fighters, internet, like whatever, we're crazy people. We're obsessed with this. This is like, it may seem silly, but like a lot of us have kind of sacrificed a lot of stuff to fight, to be able to fight, to go places, to fight. And that only happens if you're a crazy person, right? So you got to kind of have that spark, that passion. To me, it doesn't matter if you're unathletic. It doesn't matter if you've never picked up a stick before. It doesn't matter if you're a guy, if you're a gal, if you choose neither of those gender, misnomers or like names or whatever. If you just love to fight, you're already in the right way. You're already in the right lane, I mean, and if you don't, then, it's probably not going to happen.
Sure. I probably haven't put it out there personally for me. I did make a promise to one of our local players that if there was ever a stupid situation where someone decided that I was worth a 7th or a 6th warrior, that's when I would take it serious. I was like, if and only if I hit a 6, will I ever take it serious? And I get held to that every week, just in case.
But like, it's like this idea, though. It's like Randall told me about this idea that he talked to me once about the way he feels about AmpGuard, right? About not just the organization of AmpGuard, but going out to the park each weekend. He says, for him, it feels like his first day.
Yeah.
He's got that excitement. He's got that like love of the game, that just like, I'm just happy to be here, that passion, right? And that's what I'm talking about, right? Whether it's your 6th, your 5th, your 9th, your 10th, you can take it seriously, but what you need to do is check in with yourself and make sure you're still loving doing this.
Yeah.
Like to this day, I still love to fight.
Yeah.
I think about all the time that I, spent doing this, and it was like, man, if I got into like wrestling and then went into MMA, I'd be making way more money right now, probably, or I just get knocked the fuck out. Like who knows, right? But I love to do this. I still love to do this. And all the top tier guys, man, all the top tier fighters, that's the one thing. All of us are crazy people that just love to swing foam bats at each other. So
no, you guys are absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. No, love for AmpGuard, and then like obviously I enjoy fighting quite a bit, but if I only could throw ice balls for 4 hours straight, I would do that. If Charles was to bring his baseball glove and we just played catch for 4 hours, I would do that.
Yeah.
It's the people, it's the environment. It's very little to do with, man, I really need to play a druid this week. I need to be around these people. That's, so.
Yeah. And specifically with the fighting, if I can just add one quick little thing that, like as we're talking, it makes me think about it. Like, I think it's even more, I think it's even more important to love fighting now more than ever, because fighting is as good as it's ever been, right? Fighting is right now, the way it looks, with the advent of the internet and sharing information and teaching each other, and the technology of weapons getting so much better. And like that sport, to be good at this sport is freaking hard. Mm-hmm. It's a punishing sport. Like if you make one little slip up, that's all it takes is just a little touch. You're dead. You're done. Right. So your like love of fighting has to be so much so that you'll accept the fact that it's like, well, probably I'm going to lose a lot, right? I'm going to lose a ton before I get even kind of a little good, right? Like not even mid-tier, but even just getting okay, you're going to lose a lot of fights, right? So if you love winning and losing, or if you love winning and playing games where you win, ramp guard is not your game.
Right.
Foam fighting is not your game. Despite all the victories I have, though, that's an island in a sea of losses, right? In a sea of failure, right? So if you want to get good at fighting, you have to be okay with losing. It doesn't mean you have to like it, but your love of fighting has to be greater than your love of winning.
That's a great point. Again, we're going to stay on this topic a little bit. I know someone who went to a Bell event last week and came back and was like, "Yeah, there was a little Bell event in Colorado last week."
That hardly seems safe.
Well, there was either way, and the person came back to me and was like, "Yeah, if." I could see high tier amp guard players going to this Bell event and wrecking house because the translation of skills and whatnot. But that's a different story altogether.
A whole different thing.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about knighthood. We've talked about sword knight. We've gotten all of that. This is an opportunity for you to talk about your belt, your knight, your beltlings. Let's talk about them. So, who are you belted to? Who do you got belted to you?
My knight was Sir Randall, who I kind of like monthly have this just kind of like overwhelming sort of like sense of being humble. Like I was so lucky to have been as a knight, really lucky, because I was super lucky that they put up with me, that, and it even, Ben was my knight and he is always my knight, but it's a little bit like Ben and Amy, right?
Sure.
Like it kind of became my surrogate parents, still are, honestly. But like, I was so lucky to find somebody like Ben who I think knew I wanted to be a crown knight, but also really knew that like fighting was the way to go.
Yeah.
And really engendered a lot of situations for me to experience just how great fighting could be and really like revel in my passion for it. Right. Mm-hmm. Like we go to events, I got a lot better at fighting than Ben, though I will put a little like misnomer here.
Yeah.
Or a little asterisk. Ben is tricky. Ben is very tricky. He's a tricky fighter.
He is.
Right? And he, one, because he gaslights you. And he's like, I don't know how
I'm not that good. Yeah, right.
I don't know how knees work. I only fight with a 33-inch sword, blah, 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 blah. But Ben is an incredibly intelligent person. You have to be smart to be a good fighter, right?
Yeah.
So when we would go to events and stuff, like Ben would throw me at different sword knights and different warlords, just be like, oh, hey, for him, it wasn't like go forth and destroy. It was just like, yeah, see what you can pick up, have fun, So I never really felt that like pressure from him to be a sword knight or anything like that, which I think was a very good thing for me. Right. But he was my knight and I couldn't have asked for a better knight. I still think of him as my knight. He's still a mentor to me, as well as being one of my best friends in the entire world, right? My first beltling, who is also my first squire, it was Shion, who was my page, and then he was my page for a number of years, and then he became my squire, and I had the privilege of dropping the sword at him a few years back at a gathering of the crowns. My other squire that I got to drop the sword on is Sir Belthol. Sir Belthol is, like I was saying, he was Polaris's first warlord and their second Knight of the Sword. And but he lived in Albuquerque, he lived in Pegasus Valley for a number of years, and that's where he kind of learned about, you know, he would come up to on Sundays and fight with us in Wharton Spire, and we'd go down to Pegasus Valley, and so we helped train him up and stuff. Both of those guys I am extremely proud of, you know, not only for the Amp Guard thing, but just as people, right? Because for Beltlings, for me, I really need to feel that friendship connection, right? Like I know that some nights like to kind of take in a lot of people, right? For me, it's never really been that way, because I feel like I have a harder time expressing myself to a larger group of people. I feel that like the relationship that Ben and I had, being such great friends, has really translated through my own belt line. Right. So that's something that I really try and look for, is like, can I be friends with this person outside of the game, as well as being their mentor inside the game, the way that, you know, Ben was to me. So those are my squires that are knights. Of my active squires now, I have Kira, that's Madison, and she's awesome. She's super salty, super sparky, but she's great, you know. I have my other squire is Quirt, who was my page for a really long time, really long time. And actually, when I told him, I was like, dude, it's time to put on the red belt, he's like, nah, I'm gonna chill on that. Right. I was a little dejected. I felt like I got like turned down for a dance or something. I'm like, well, that's cool, bro, like whatever. But I got to give him the red belt, and that's really cool, because I've known that kid since he was like knee high to a June bug, you know what I mean? Yep. Then I have my man-at-arms. One is Axe Hammer, who is an old school amp guarder that has lived up in northern New Mexico for a very long time. And when I first moved to Santa Fe from Dragonspine, I was like, there's my fighting career. Like that's it. You know, we're done. Until I went to this fighter practice and I saw two guys, and this is like in January in Santa Fe. So there's snow all over the ground. It's cold. It sucks. I'm a desert rat. Like, this is awful. But I roll up to this fighter practice. There's this one dude, Joel, who's a very good friend of mine, and Danny, Axehammer. And they're like in the snow with their hoodies, like, you know, like Kenny from South Park.
That's right.
You know, all bundled up. They look like the Michelin Marshmallow Man, like fight, like doing ninja moves at each other. They sucked. They were terrible. I remember sitting in my car just being like, oh God. You know, and I had come from a Shark Tank, man. Right. I'd come from a Shark Tank where I had Omrin, I had Relcor, I had Shion, I had Saint, right? I had Raishad, you know, like all these guys that were really good, right? And I was just watching these guys do like ninja flips in the park at each other. But I went out there, I beat them up a little bit, and they were willing to learn. And I was like, cool, let's do this, right? So I rolled those guys through months of block strike, of doing drills. I think there was a number of months where I just didn't fight with my right hand. I just did all my fighting with my left, right? And Joel went off to pursue a career in MMA, and Danny stuck with me, you know? And I think that was probably the coolest thing in the world, that he was just like willing to learn. And he'd been playing Amp Guard longer than I had. He'd been playing since like 92, right? So at a gathering of the crowns, I bestowed a man-at-arms belt on him, and he's my boy. And my newest man-at-arms is Unknown, right? Who moved here from places unknown, from parts unknown, from Arizona. And we clicked up. I really like his approach to fighting. He has a lot of athleticism. He's a very smart kid. He is very explosive, but he has a lot of, even though he has a lot of gifts, he's very receptive. And I think that's a very important thing when you're teaching somebody about fighting, is that they love to fight and they're willing to listen and think about things critically and take that information and adapt, right? So it's been, so I mean, I'm super lucky. All my beltlings are amazing.
Unknown is in the chat and is put Paige in the chat.
All right, so now he's my page.
Well, whatever. He wears nice hats, so
he does. You know, it's funny. I think I wanted to make a I wanted to make a belt for him that reflected, because the page thing is kind of an interesting tradition in my belted line, because I was a page. I was Ben's page, and I specifically asked to be a man at arms, and he gave me a page belt, and I thought that was a girl's belt. So again, I was a stupid young teenage male. I was an idiot, right? But we were at the Dragonspine Burning Lands War, and Randall calls me up, and I'm like, it's my moment. And he gives me this yellow belt, and I found out later that he like lost it in his backyard for a while, and then like some black widows laid eggs in it and stuff. So now I tell all my underlings that it's like, or my underbelts, that it's like, the page thing is kind of cool because it made me it made me face my insecurities, you know, and I was Ben's page for a real long time. So now that's why he's saying that. So when I made a belt when I got a belt made for Unknown, I think he was like, I want a man at arms belt, but I want to reflect the page tradition. So, okay, that's cool. So I got this really cool belt made. I was like, all right, black and yellow, baby, black and yellow. That's going to look so good. But dude, it came out looking like an Annihilus belt. I didn't even think about that till I bought it.
Yeah.
And I gave it to him, and he was like, thanks, bro. Like,
yeah, way to
I'm
hook
going
it
to
up.
get jumped.
Yeah, right? Colors in the wrong area, man.
Totally, dude. Totally colors in the wrong area. But yeah.
Oh, jeez. Okay. That's your whole family, right? That's your belt family at that point?
That's my whole family, yeah.
Okay.
Eric's got his squires, and Brian's got his squire, and all of that. But yeah, that's mine. I kind of keep it small, you know.
Okay.
I kind of like the idea of keeping it small.
So you're possibly considering putting a new person in your belt line. What are you looking for? Is it much like the wheel where you're looking for that family aspect, or is there another thing you're looking for?
Well, you know, it's hard because wheel is such a part of my life inside and outside of Amtgard that it's hard to separate the two sometimes. But and you know, like a lot of my underbelts tend to get in wheel, right? But the biggest thing is that passion, right? Like if they are very passionate about Amtgard in whatever respect that takes, right? Like just because I'm a sword knight, right, and a fighter doesn't mean I expect that of my beltlings, right? I just expect them to have some passion for Amtgard. And one of the things that I tell them is like, to be a squire of mine, you need to be active in Amtgard, right? You can be my man, like Axehammer doesn't really play a lot of Amtgard these days, right? He's got kids, he's a dad, he runs his own business and stuff like that. You know, I'm cool with him still representing me and my belt line and kind of our virtues that we espouse. But to be a squire, I believe, is training to be a knight. Right? It's like your unpaid internship, right? So I first of all expect them, if they are a squire of mine, to conduct themselves as a knight, whether or not they wear the red, or whether or not they are super active or only a little active. If you're putting on that red belt, you have to act like a knight because that's what you're training to be, right? And you have to be passionate. You have to be passionate about Amtgard, whatever that is. If it's office, if it's service, if it's fighting. If it's fighting, I can help out a lot. But if it's something even I don't really know a lot about, you still have my support, right? And I will help you find somebody that can help you in the ways that I can't, right? Like if we're talking about serpent stuff, like I don't know how to do a French seam, right? But I know a lot of people who do.
Right.
You just have to be passionate about it, right? So it's that's the big thing.
Okay.
You know, if you love it, that it'll take you a long way.
All right. And we're gonna bring all of the night talk back full circle and go Amp-Guard overall for the last question in knighthood before we get to a couple of goofy questions. So Cleo wanted to know, what do you think about Polaris has opened up their night Discord to the public? How do you feel about that for Dragonspine?
I think parts of the Knights circle should be private. I think parts of it should, but I like that idea. I think it's an interesting idea because I think it helps the populace to understand better what Knights expect, right? I think that Dragonspine has one of the best Knights. Of course, I'm biased, right?
Sure.
But I think we have some people that really epitomize knighthood and really epitomize the character that one should have if they're a knight. And I think that even though somebody isn't your squire or your page or your man-at-arms or whatever, you can still mentor them and you can still help that person to be a better Amp-Guarder and to make the game better, right? So for discussions, you know, like for votes and stuff, I think that should probably be private because things can get very personal in there. And to respect like the privacy of all parties involved, I think that's just necessary. But I'm not opposed to opening up like more discussions that the Knights have about what it takes to be a Knight when we're looking at certain people. In general, I'm not a person that really likes ninja knightings. I don't like surprise knightings because personally, I believe that knighthood is an office one kind of takes for life. And I think that you should be very aware of what's going to get offered to you. And you should have time to think about whether you want to accept it or not. Right. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. I kind of like it. I don't know how that would, I mean, I'm interested to see how Polaris is going to work all that out, you know, but maybe they could provide a really good blueprint moving forward that the rest of the game could kind of learn from their example.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Not opposed to it.
Cool. All right. That was the last of the real questions. We got some zingers coming.
I'm ready.
Sarandel needs to know, what's it like being the most handsome knight?
Everything it's cracked up to be. Everything. It's everything and more.
Man.
Okay.
So if you're aspiring to be a knight, and you think that you look better looking than Sir Anatole, there should be more motivation for you. Well, I mean, you're also wrong, but you know.
All right. Yeah, you're wrong. Because there can only be one. All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Dom, Xander the Reaper wanted to know, why are you so fly?
For a white guy, I believe.
For a white guy, yeah. For a white guy, I was just gonna let you figure out those two specific parts of yourself, but
you know, like I said earlier, bats, raps, and craps. Right? You can master the 3 domains. You too can be fly. Right?
Yeah, but you don't want to smoke, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you don't want it.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want it.
All right. In the chat, Still had asked, when you retire from the game of Amp-Guard, are you going to retire your umpire number 2 or?
My umpire number?
Nope. Okay. All right. That's going to stay. It's going to stay active. Someone else could pick it up down the road.
I'll probably die on the diamond. I'll be honest with you. I don't plan to retire as long as there's As long as there's that field of dreams, baby, I'm out there.
All
You
right.
know, I'll always be out there.
That's fantastic. And I believe, oh, actually, let's see.
It's a baseball reference, right? Like,
Yeah,
I have no idea. I have
Field
no
of
idea
dreams.
about sports.
Which makes it even more fun.
So I'm
You're
just
like,
like thinking of movies about baseball.
you're like, my sport back in high school was D&D, but Field of Dreams, right, guys?
Yeah, right.
I guess there is one more serious question that I got asked. If you could answer quickly for us, how many Serpent Flame knights does Dragonspine have?
How many Serpent and Flame Knights?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Azrael's a Serpent Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Emmer's a Serpent Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. See, Astrion, like we've had knights since I've been in Dragonspine that are from lands that used to be Dragonspine that are now kingdoms.
Ooh.
Like all of
Ooh.
California.
Yeah, little caveat there, right?
Right. And we had some baller Serpent Knight. Like that's something that's kind of cool. If I can go off on a tangent here,
Please do.
About like Dragonspine history is like a lot of people look like the fighting thing is the glamour thing, right? But if you look at like the ANS competitions that have gone down in Dragonspine, like they're some of the best in the country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know Randall's a Serpent Knight as well, but damn, dude, like when you had like Goran, and when you had Chalet, who was a Serpent Knight who had our credits down here, when you had Goldcrest, when you had Amy, when you had Ben and Immer, like all just duking it out over a Dragon Master. Like those guys had some bomb pieces of work, right? And it was just as competitive, if not more so, than the fighting tournaments that were happening at the same time, right? Because a lot of us were still growing, you know, like when I was getting my Warlord, when I was getting my, like all that, like I'm a lot better than I was back then. All of us were, right? All of us were still figuring out a lot of stuff, you know? And that's not to say that we weren't good, but I would consider ourselves very far from where we are now, if that makes sense. Amy has been a badass, you know, since she started competing in those things.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like that is a deep well. That's a deep pool, ANS, in Dragonspine. And those guys had the mentality of like warlords, right? Like cold dead hands. And their work reflected that. You know. For Flame Knights, I know we have Randall and Amy.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have, or Azrael, sorry. I know we have Dame Leela. Oh, man. Alucard is a Crown Knight. Mm-hmm. Glenolf is a Flame Knight.
I'm gonna let you dangle here because
who am I forgetting, Doug?
Sir Francis is a Flame Knight.
Oh my own Squire brother, dude.
Yeah.
You have Francis and Annabelle Lee.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, Annabelle Lee. Yep.
Yeah. You have both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I forgetting?
Let's see. As far as Flame and Serpent go, I think that's everyone that's active in Dragonspine currently. I think that's everyone.
I think that's all the Serpents active.
Yeah.
For Flame, I feel like I'm missing one.
That's active?
Let me see. In Las Cruces, you have Ben, Amy, Annabelle, Ruth, Bubba.
Bubba's Charles or
Bubba's Francis, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Francis. Then in Albuquerque, You have Leela, you have Alucard, you have Glenolf.
Sir Baihu, but that's a crown. But
He's
I
a
mean,
crown.
knights,
Yeah.
and then yeah. I
Yeah.
think you got everyone. But for your relief, Zama did put the dragonspine.net in the chat.
Oh,
so anyone that wanted to look and see if there was any missed and pointed out for Sir Anatole here, they can do that. But I think you got most of them.
Thank you. 100, batting 100, baby. Still.
All right. So the last question, the goofy question, with 20 members of the wheel, what kind of vehicle is this now that the wheel
it's
is?
a semi-truck.
It's a semi-truck.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because when Baihu joined the wheel, he was the 18-wheeler, right? And so I don't know if that's as big as semi-trucks get, but you're going to need a couple spares, right?
Yeah.
2 spares brings you up to 20. So we're like a semi-truck.
Yeah.
I think.
Cool.
Does any vehicle have more wheels than that?
Well, so I was thinking about that because I actually reflected on this a little bit.
Oh, wow.
If you have an 18-wheeler and you have 2, and you put the 2 on each side of the cab, so that you have 2 spares, you have 20.
There you go.
So you're talking like a long haul 18-wheeler.
Long haul.
Long haul.
Concrete cowboy. You know?
Yeah, there you are.
Rolling on down the line.
Gideon Stormcaller wanted to point out trains. You could also be a train.
Yeah, trains don't exist.
Trains aren't real. So there you go. He is a toaster and trains don't exist. That's where we're at. Sir Anatole, that is all the questions I had for you. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the populace, the Kingdom of Kodiak, or to me specifically? I don't care, whatever. Do you want to say anything?
Well, first of all, Your Majesty, thanks for doing this.
No problem.
I know we were talking about it a little bit at the before the camera started rolling or whatever, but this is an incredibly cool thing that you're doing because community is very important, especially in these times, right? Like where we can't actually go out to a park and do the thing we all love to do. This can scratch that itch somewhat. So my hats are off to you, sir. I think it is a great thing that you're doing. And I very much enjoy seeing different people in this kingdom that, I don't even know. These are like new faces and stuff like that. So for new people, but also for older players like myself, it has been a joy to kind of see the fire in younger players and have that on a weekly like webcast, right? Like at your fingertips or whatever. Just be excellent to each other's guys. If you guys are interested, I'm going to do a little shameless promotion right here. I have a fighting podcast called Stab Chats. It's free. You can check it out if you want to learn more about fighting or hear from prominent fighters in the fighting community. Give that a check out. So that's all I got.
All right. I'm glad that you said what you said about seeing some new people, because that's going to bring us to the end of our 3rd topic. And it's going to bring up the 4th topic that we're going to spend the next 4 weeks talking about.
Right.
And this is me setting a challenge to the people listening. I challenge you to challenge a friend to ask me to talk on Kingdom of Kodiak.
Hell yeah.
I want 4 people to nominate a friend to come on here and talk to me about their Amtgard experience. And I would like the personal challenge out to Lady Stillhilt, if she was willing to come on Kingdom of Kodiak and discuss Amtgard. Additionally, we are still looking, as a kingdom, we're still looking for someone to host Mid-Reign. By the time Mid-Reign gets here in August, we could be meeting. So if you're interested in Mid-Reign, please talk to your Monarch and let the Monarch talk to me so that we can get that set up. Outside of that, I hope everyone has a fantastic week. We'll see you Saturday for games role play. The Champions Challenges will be due, and we'll be talking with the Regions Challenges. Again, Sir Anatole, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you again. We got some wax to get in for sure.
Hell yeah, bet on
Yeah.
that.
All right. And I'll see you Saturday. So
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. And until next week, this has been Canoe of Kodiak. Have a great one.